And today I'm very honoured to have with me Mr. Roger Sutcliffe. Roger is one of the UK's leading educationalists and is a pioneer of philosophy for children, not just in the UK but globally. And we'll be exploring some of those topics around P4C during the chat with Roger today. Welcome, Roger.
Great pleasure to be here.
Thank you for agreeing to come on and share your experiences with myself and others. You grew up in England. Whereabouts?
Very much in the south, although my family, well, my father at any rate, grew up in the north of England in the 1920s, actually, so tough time for him. He moved to the south and took a job. He was a clergyman, actually, and became a chaplain to the deaf, and travelled all over the country. So we were based in the north of London initially, but because of his job he decided to send me away to school when I was quite young, and so I went down to Hampshire.
And was that boarding school, was it?
It was boarding school.
And was that quite common in the 1960s for people to send their children to boarding school still?
Well, I think it was a middle class thing, really.
Okay.
Although in my family's case it was a bit of a necessity, because he was away, he and my mother were away a lot, frankly. I should explain, he was deaf, profoundly deaf himself, hence he became a chaplain to the deaf, and my mother effectively was his interpreter. So when he was in, say, Leeds or wherever, well, she could have taken all three of us with her, because I have a brother and sister, but they took the decision to send us to boarding school.
And did you enjoy it?
I personally did for the most part, but look, when you're 7 and you miss your mum, those are desperate times. But you get used to that, I suppose, and I threw myself into schooling and largely enjoyed it.
Now, being in a boarding school, particularly when you come into the intermediate and high school years, where there were a lot of extracurricular activities offered.
Yeah, and I think for me that's what made it an enjoyable and enriching experience. So particularly when I went on to my secondary school, I loved the sport there. Most of my free time was focused on one sport or another.
And what were the sports?
Well, actually my favourite was a rather strange sport called fives, where you're hitting a hard ball with a gloved hand against walls. It sounds very simple, but it's a fantastic game. More commonly I was playing squash, and in the summer I played cricket.
Fantastic. And do you still follow the cricket today?
I very much do, yes. I think it's a wonderful game. Not everyone enjoys it. Some people think, what's the point of that? But I like the ebb and flow of the game. I like the fact that it takes place over a good period of time. So you're not having to make, well, you are in some ways making knee-jerk reactions, because if the ball's coming at you very fast, but the tactics of it, the element of thinking and strategy really appeals to me.
Now, boarding schools back in when you were there and also today, are they still quite academically focused? And
well, many of them are, because most of them, not quite all, are private, and they have to increasingly, I think, in the modern world compete, and often that's about getting results and so on. So yes, but of course, as you say, I mean, they offer many things, sport, drama, some of them have very fine music departments, all sorts.
Yeah. And then after completing high school, did you go directly to university?
No, I didn't actually. In those days, gap years, as they're called, were very much the thing for young people. I believe nowadays people are taking gap years at any stage, and that's a great thing, I think. But I was leaving school quite young and felt that I could take the opportunity to see the world. And my godfather, this is the clergyman connection, was the Bishop of Madras at the time. Okay. So I arranged to go to Madras I didn't actually see a lot of him, but then he was probably very busy. But there's a school for the deaf in Madras, and they arranged for me to spend 3 months there as an assistant. And of course that was a complete eye-opener to me, a very different world.
And that led you into education to become
Pretty
a teacher?
much, yes. I mean, another thing that I did between my school and university was, it was in the summer term, I went to a prep school and taught cricket there, basically.
Oh, okay.
And that was just a dream, really. I was being paid to play. Yeah.
That would have been nice. And then you studied philosophy and French, is that correct?
Well, I started actually studying philosophy and psychology.
Okay.
Thinking that psychology would open the world to, a rather wider perspective on human beings, and I was, I have to say, rather disappointed that the focus, at least in the first year, was very much on animal experimentation, and that was not my thing. And I thought, this is not telling me very much about what it is to be human. It tells you something, but not so much. So I struggled to find an alternative. I considered doing philosophy and maths, but French looked like the better bet. Well, to be absolutely frank, I could study 5 modules of philosophy and 3 of French, whereas if I'd done maths it would have been 4 of philosophy and 4 of French, and I just wanted to do more philosophy, so I did the French.
But you did go back to math later, didn't you?
I did actually,
Yeah.
but that would get too complex a story. Essentially, when I went into teaching, my real love was English and language. I would have liked to have taught philosophy to start with, but back in the late 60s, when I was early 70s, that was not really on the cards. So I had to have a subject to teach, and to be honest, I didn't really want to teach French, and I'd always enjoyed maths, and I got a maths job, but without the degree, so I thought, well, I better get a degree in maths too.
Yeah, just to shore it up a little bit.
Sure. Yeah,
yep.
absolutely.
And then P4C, Philosophy for Children. How did you discover the pathway that has led you down this road and down the road to be able to give the message and to train and be a part of so many educators and students' lives?
By sheer, as the Americans say, happenstance or serendipity, luck. I had taught maths. I initially taught English for 5 years. I then taught maths for 10 years. And I couldn't see myself being a maths teacher for the rest of my working life. So I thought, well, now's the time, early to mid-30s, when I need to make one of those big decisions in life. So I resigned as a teacher, and I was a bachelor at the time and thought, well, I'll go travelling again and see what turns up. And as it happened, about a month after I resigned, I saw a film called Socrates for 6-year-olds,
Okay.
BBC film, which was all about P4C, and it looked really interesting. So I thought, well, I'll go to America. And I went, saw it, trained a little bit, and I decided really that it was very innovative at that time, at least in the UK context. So I thought, well, I'll go back to the UK, and because I had a little bit of savings, and I knew no one was going to employ me to do P4C, so I approached a few local primary schools and said, would you be interested? And because they didn't have to pay me and it was giving them a bit of extra time, I practiced there, saw that it was doing what it said on the tin, and I actually returned to the school where I taught maths, but I taught English again, but I was really teaching philosophy for children then. So
Where was that school?
It was in Horsham in Sussex. It's quite a famous school, actually.
They've still got a very strong P4C program there, haven't they?
They don't.
They don't.
But they've just, as it were, made the decision to restart.
Okay.
And a friend and colleague of mine is going to be leading it there. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Now, P4C globally, you've obviously seen and been a huge part of that growth. And in South America, for example, there's quite a big uptake there.
For sure. After North America, which is of course where it started, South America was the first area, particularly Brazil and Venezuela and Argentina. Those three countries were the first three to really take it up and build it into their system. Now, there's nowhere in the world where it is a prescribed curriculum, but there are some countries where it is very well embedded. As a matter of fact, in South America now, or is it Central America, the one that I think has the most exciting P4C projects is Mexico.
Okay.
So yes, definitely South America has taken it to its heart.
But coming back to the curriculum, you've been involved in writing a curriculum in the UK, is that correct? Or a shaping document, is it?
Right. I don't know if I'd put it quite like that. I mean, I've had various opportunities to influence the way that things happen. Let's put it that way. I mean, nobody's ever asked me to write a whole curriculum inside of UK, but recently we were asked to develop a curriculum in China, and we're hoping that we can establish one in Saudi Arabia as well. So we're looking for exciting developments.
Well, for sure, and I'm sure that the people who come across you, inspired and motivated. As you know, I discovered P4C after having the opportunity to do a level 1 foundation program through you, and furthered myself in that. And that's because of you, and I can see the changes in that. And I know you talk about what is wise and wisdom and knowledge in the programs. You're certainly somebody who I've met who is wise and humble, and all those things that P4C brings across. I'd like to thank you, Roger, for taking the time today to speak with me.
It's a pleasure, and you're most kind.
Thank you. I would highly recommend people to have a look at the DialogueWorks website, dialogueworks.co.uk. Roger Sutcliffe is the president of the organisation, and they do offer programs and resources globally. It can make a difference to an educator, and it definitely can improve student lives and their learning and teaching outcomes. Thank you.